Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We are loaded up for the midweek edition. Mike Babcock will talk all things baseball. Get a Husker preview from Babbers. Now that there's a schedule, the over-under was mid-February. Kidding. Big Ten just doesn't care, right? Let's wait, and then, 44 games. Let's slam them in. No postseason tournament, whatever. We'll get on our soapbox about that in a little bit. Mike Schuart will join us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey will give us some thoughts on the epic Happy Gilmore, no doubt. We'll get some thoughts from Shuey on just who most likely represents Chubbs on the tour. In real life, who's more like Happy, and who's the Shooter McGavin in real life of said PGA Tour. Jacob Padilla is going to be with us in 1 hour. Husker Hoops, Monster Showdown with Minnesota for Husker Volleyball. And then the Pride of Ord is back. Andy Markowski will join us, and we'll talk to Andy about finishing at the rim. Numbers to get in at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Email Chris at HailVarsity.com, and can find us and follow us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. What do you think last night? Nebraska didn't get the cover, ran out of gas, but they had chances to do some work and steal one in College Park last night.
I mean, they were the better team for the first 10 minutes, if not the whole first half. I mean,
we hear that and say that a lot, don't we?
Yeah, but that last night was the first time where it truly looked like that team just was gassed at the end. Derek Walker, not sure if it's an injury but he said that she wasn't feeling right in the second half. And,
I think it was probably illness.
Yeah, but nonetheless, that team without Derek Walker just looked exponentially more tired. He's the energy bunny in that lineup. Whenever he was on the bench, the effort while it was there on the defensive end, the offense was just not cohesive. And I think it comes down to guys cutting, guys getting themselves open, guys getting open looks, and just wasn't there last night.
Here is Fred Hoiberg on the fatigue factor, and it's very real. You're talking 7 games, 12 days. You've heard it over and over again. Well, the final 8 minutes was danger time against Penn State. Nebraska just could not finish against Maryland. It was down to a 2-point game, under 6. Nebraska battled back. Webster drilled a monster 3 to tie things up at 44. And then Nebraska just did what Nebraska does a lot. They settled. They settled for some tough shots. They settled for some questionable decisions on offense. And they just got stagnant. We'll spend some time next hour with a couple of our basketball insiders on that stagnation piece. But fatigue's a reality.
I mean, I think it is affecting us, Robin. It was still a 2-point game, under 6 to go. I think 5 and change. It was still a 2-point game, and then we just completely fell apart on both ends. And when you miss layups and you miss free throws, and they go down and they convert, on those same type of shots, it is a little bit deflating. And then, to answer your question, there is a sense of fatigue with our guys right now. We're trying to do everything we can. Most of them will go back and sit in the cold tub tonight. That's what they did after Penn State. Is as soon as we got to the hotel in Maryland, they all got in the cold tub and in the ice tub, and it's just trying to get him moving and stretch sessions right now to try to fight through, this crazy stretch that we're on. But, I thought our guys battled. I thought they played hard. I didn't think it was an effort thing tonight. We just really struggled to get anything going. I thought we stood around too much, especially when things got tough. When you move like we have been, we've been pretty darn good. The Illinois and Penn State game, for the majority of it, we're as good as we've been. But, these last 7-8 minutes of games right now, I think we're wearing down, and I do think a lot of it is fatigue.
And Fred's pretty real, right? When Fred Hoiberg tells me something, I believe it. I don't look at it as an excuse. This is a reality. These guys aren't used to it. They're not getting a lot of, clearly, practice time. There's slammed together prep time, and I think they put in phenomenal effort. But they shot 28% in the second half. They took a lot of threes that wouldn't hit. They were more efficient in the first half. You're right about Walker with not only his ability to pass, but just people feed off of him on the court with his energy. And when it comes to Nebraska and their decision-making, I mean, that's what I go back to. And it's easy to say that on our end. We're not out there logging 40 minutes. And we're not logging 40 minutes 7 times over a 12-day stretch. The question I have is this with Nebraska. And sometimes it's okay to take somebody one-on-one. Sometimes it's okay to try and get to the rim. You got to finish at the rim. That's so obvious. But some of Nebraska's shots just didn't go in. Some of Nebraska's shots were forced at the rim. There's one take by McGowan's. I'm like, what are you doing, man? I know you want to posterize half of D.C. I get it. But it was just a wild, crazy shot that led to transition, 3, bang. And Maryland didn't shoot great. I mean, Nebraska's defense needs to be commended. But when and I haven't charted this, and I'm sure Jacob Padilla's got some sort of estimation in mind, but with Nebraska's possessions, how many of their possessions result in a quick shot or a tough shot or a not the shot we wanted category? I think a lot of them were that way, the final 7 minutes or so. And you had a couple of quick possessions that Teddy jacked it up. You have some guys that just still love hero ball. They just do. And Nebraska's assist numbers have been so good when they've been competitive. Nebraska's assist numbers, I think they were under 10 last night. But, man, they moved the ball well in the first half. And when they got back into it in the second half, they were within striking distance right there. And they even had built a lead. I mean, they were a chance to grow a lead, right? Work towards a 6, 8, 10-point number, and then they take a bad shot or a quick shot on a possession. It's not that you shouldn't shoot if you're open, but is it the right shot? And you can be open early in the possession, but they had a chance to drive, and I know that didn't go well last night, but they had a chance to drive in some instances on offense, and they settled for the 3. And it's just maddening. In the same breath, though, I love their guts. I love how hard they play. And a guy that got extended minutes because he's such a freak athletically and he's so big and strong and agile is
Banton?
No, not Banton. I'm losing my mind here. Shamil.
Okay.
Sorry, dude. That was bad. Shamil is such a versatile guy. He's big and he can guard on the perimeter, but sometimes Shamil just gets tunnel vision, man, and he just drives it in, and it's the ball goes to him, and if he's got his mind made up, it's a black hole. And I'd love to see him as good as he can be at getting by his defender. Man, I think there are guys waiting to catch in rhythm on a kick out from Shamil Stevenson. And I'm not piling on him. I'm not being critical to be a jerk. I'm just saying there are some aspects of the ball game in a lot of Nebraska's games where they've been competitive, that Shamil's going to put the old football helmet on, no face mask, drive in and run over 3 dudes. And there's going to be an offensive charge or 2 called. And it can zap you from a momentum or an energy standpoint. I was driving home and I heard McGowan's drill one from, it wasn't quite half court, but it was from way downtown, bang. And yet went in, and it went in to cut a lead that was up to 5 back down to 2, or it cut a lead from 7 back down to 4. But it's one of those no, okay, yes, it went in. But again, shot selection, and Fred will get into that here in a minute. We'll have some updates here on Nebraska and Ireland. Sorry, Kranek. No Nebraska, Ireland. We'll get there in a minute. But it is truly just maddening with how close they've been to putting a 3-game winning streak together. And then just the decision-making and the basketball IQ part, balancing that with phenomenal effort is what's really tough about this team. And they are so good at grinding. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how much I appreciate what they're going through and the effort they're giving for Nebraska basketball fans. In the same token, it just unraveled. It just unraveled, and a lot of that was due to shot selection.
I mean, the last 3 games have showed me, though, this team is close. They were not good from around the rim yesterday. If you get some of those layups, which should be falling, it's what the good basketball teams make fall. Those close shots around the rim, it's as simple as that. You can get some of those to fall. That game's closer, if not a Husker win. But at this point, I don't know, is a contested layup better than a contested 3 for this Husker team? It seems like there's just...
Well, just go up and frickin' dunk it. I mean, that sounds easy, but do it that way. The downside to it is if you try and dunk and miss, you're headed to the line, and that's not been a comfort spot for Nebraska basketball. Clearly it hasn't been. Maryland wasn't great either, and a lot of that was Nebraska's defense. And if you're Nebraska basketball and you force 17 turnovers, brother, you got to get more than 4 points. You just do. And Nebraska's turnover numbers, what did they end up with? Like 7 turnovers last night?
I thought they were getting close to 10, but I know it was a lot less than Maryland.
7 or 9. And 2 of them were double dribbles and 2 of them are travels. Just stuff that you're not supposed to do at the Division I level. So there's still a lot of warts that need to be burned off with this team, but you can't fault their give a damn level, which is great. Tom's with us on Hail Varsity. Tom, what'd you think?
Hey, Smitty, what you're saying about Stevenson, boy, that's just right on target. Wouldn't it be beautiful to see him develop a spin move? You know, even a Euro step of some sort, but a spin move would just be unbelievable.
Well,
I think it would. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there are times where he's tried to spin, but he clears the lane out, and it's a charge. I mean, but I know what you're saying. There's some additions to his game because of his athleticism, and he can handle the ball pretty well for his size. I mean, I'm not smiling all the time if he's putting it on the deck because, you know, there could be a turnover. But, bro, if he could shake his guy, which he can do, and then find a teammate, I mean, it's right there. And you've seen the team. I mean, Banton started well because he got great kickouts and was in rhythm. You know how good Lat can be when they drive and kick to him. And that's part of Teddy's game that's kind of come around. Now, you can revert back to the old dark side of the forest, so to speak, where these guys still do force it, and there's still a work in progress, Tom, with
and I got a question for you, too.
Mm-hmm.
On that half-court set with Eduardo, I just don't understand why he's got the ball at all at the top of the key. He has absolutely no handles, and the one time last night he double dribbled, and the other time he threw it completely just out of bounds looking for a wing either side. I just don't understand what we're doing with him out there.
I think what you do, Tom, I think the reason for that is you want to unclog the lane and draw their bigs out on him, whether they're in zone or man, And I think the one thing you can see from Andre and for sure from Walker, I think those guys do a hell of a job of finding teammates in that high post with a backdoor pass. So I think they're trying to draw the defense out.
More so Walker, for sure.
Sure.
But it's a double-edged sword with Eduardo because, I don't know, I feel sorry for the kid being out there. They got to learn a little bit better.
Well,
thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate you, Tommy. Yeah, and the thing with Eduardo, I mean, you've seen him grow, Elijah. You've seen him get and play pretty good minutes. That's only going to get better the more time he's out there. Honestly, I mean, you got to play him, and he's got to take some bumps. But I like what Eduardo's doing, and that's why you have a big out there, draw the defense out, and that's pretty common with a lot of offensive sets nowadays.
No disrespect to Eduardo Andre, but the guy is still a bit of a twig.
He's thin, and he's only been playing ball for 4 years.
Exactly, and he's still got. I mean, I expect he's got another 30, 40 pounds of muscle he can add to actually be able to be a force in the paint. But with his length and his size, he fits well into what I want this Fred Hoiberg offense to be.
I think his quickness and his athleticism really can screw your traditional Kofi type big guy in the Big Ten. Well, Andre's going to give away some weight down low. He's going to bang down low, and he did really well, I thought, rebounding the other night against Illinois. We'll get you an update on Husker baseball as the schedule is out. Nebraska, Illinois, no dice to kick off the year in Ireland. Hail Varsity continues.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Back with you, Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. So no Ireland for Illinois and Nebraska. They'll still open up the 28th. Rob the Suit is getting us locked in for Roadshow Week 0, which is going to be outstanding. And we can tap into Mike Babcock's knowledge of champagne and make do. Mike Babcock is with us. Babbers, I've never been to Ireland. I looked forward to figuring out a way to pour a Guinness in Ireland. I'll have to do that during a non-football roadie. But, hey, champagne, season opener, Coach Bielema. At least you get a season opener here, Week 0.
Yeah, that's true. And, champagne is not Ireland, but that's all right.
It's not Ireland.
It's not Ireland.
It's not.
You know, here's a bit of trivia. So when I taught, the first year I taught in Champaign, Illinois at Parkland Community College, before I got into sports writing, I was a season ticket holder for the Illini.
Okay.
There you go. They were not very good, and
it's not a Rose Bowl Illinois team.
No, it was not. Illinois wasn't very good during the time that I lived in Champaign, and my job was when I started working part time at the newspaper at one of the newspapers there. My job was to since I was part timer, I always got the visitors' locker room at the home games. So that meant I got Ohio State with Woody Hayes, and I got Michigan with Bo Schembechler, and I usually got the winning locker room. But
you had the visitors, so you got the winning locker room.
Yeah, but enough frivolity. So anyway, we're ready to play baseball, right?
We are. I can't wait for Husker baseball. The Big Ten finally got their schedule released, 44 games. No RPI, really, because for the Big Ten, there's no opportunity to go play a Big 12 or a Pac-12 or an SEC squad. And Nebraska's been so aggressive over the years with an Oregon State or in Arkansas or somebody. I mean, it's been a lot of fun early on, especially with those trips down to Arizona in February, Mike. And now you're doing Round Rock to get things kicked off against Purdue, and then you've got kind of a cluster with Ohio State coming up and Iowa at U.S. Bank Stadium. and that'll be good because, yes, we'll have baseball for sure. But your take on the eye test and what this baseball team can be year 2 under Will Bolt. Where are some reasons for optimism where Nebraska can maybe make a big jump?
Well, I think they've got the pitching candidates, a lot of them. When Will Bolt talked to us at the first day of practice, he gave us 8 or 9 names of players that he thought were in competition to be starting pitchers. They got a couple of junior college transfers that figure into the mix there possibly, and Spencer Schwellenbach could do a little pitching, little relief pitching, in addition to playing shortstop, and he got preseason second-team All-America recognition from one outlet, so you feel good about that. Leighton Banjoff, really feel good about him, his versatility. Probably going to be a first baseman, but he can move to the outfield. They have options, the ability to, go with a predominantly left-handed batting order. They can make adjustments that way, and I think they've got the talent there. But like you said, and that was one of the things that Will Bolt told us that day was that with a conference-only schedule, you got no RPI, and then. The College Baseball Writers Association, the preseason poll, one Big Ten team included in that preseason poll, Michigan, at number 34 out of 35. And during the regular season, they do 30. But so they had 35 teams. The Big Ten gets 1, and they're at number 34. And the only other teams, I think, were Indiana and Minnesota got votes. So when you're talking about no RPI, and then you're talking about the preseason rankings like that, you're going to have to be pretty aggressive and play pretty well within the conference. And that's one of the things that Bolt also said is that it's probably going to come to a situation where 3 or 4 teams are going to have to really stand out in conference in order to qualify for the NCAA.
Mike, usually the Husker baseball team adds those non-con games to boost their strength of schedule. This year the Big Ten's not allowing them to do so, but does it seem strange to you that the Big Ten says no to non-conference games, but then turns around and says, but it's okay, you can open your season in Texas against Purdue?
Yeah, I guess there's an attempt to be equitable to all the conference teams. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I'm not exactly sure why there's no Big Ten baseball tournament in Omaha. There's a Big Ten basketball tournament, right? And baseball is played outside. It seems to me like if it were an either-or, which I don't think it should be, but if it were an either-or, the one that you wouldn't have would be the basketball tournament. But, that's to me, that was a curious part of the schedule as well. And, again, it would be one more way, I guess, to have those teams stand out to try to draw some recognition because, again, like you said, it's curious that there can be no non-conference games. But, maybe by playing in Round Rock, Texas, you can get a little exposure. Media exposure. Then the next week, you're going up and playing in Minnesota, so you're right back in the Big Ten footprint. And, there's another curious thing there. Nebraska has a series in Lincoln against Rutgers, and then the next week Nebraska goes out to Rutgers and plays Rutgers a couple more times in a pod situation. So it's a curious schedule in several senses, but at least it's a schedule, and it's 44 games, and weather permitting, they're going to get rolling here pretty quick.
Mike Babcock's with us with Hail Varsity Magazine, HailVarsity.com. Some Husker baseball thoughts is the Big Red knows the task at hand, 44-game conference schedule, 4-game weekends, 3-game weekends, and some neutral site spots where you'll have a couple of different teams find their way in. So Mike is found on Twitter at MDBabs on Twitter for Mike. And so with Nebraska's offense and their pitching, my question is this. From a developmental standpoint, there's no midweek games. is that gonna hurt either at some point now or later on for Nebraska baseball with some arms to get developed?
Well, I don't know, because one of the things that Bolt anticipated was that it would be a setup of entirely 4-game series, and it's not going to be that way. I think there's 5 weekends with 4-game series, or where they play 4 games, not necessarily 4-game series, 2 and 2 kind of a thing, and then there are 8 where it's 3-game series. But so that's gonna help a little bit. I still think you're gonna have to have some pitching depth, even if you're only playing 3-game series on a weekend. You've got to have those pitchers. I think you can have an opportunity to do some things inter squad during the week with your pitching staff or whatever. The one thing that those midweek games do once the season gets going is it gives you an opportunity to get some guys out there that in a real game situation that maybe they wouldn't get to do if you're in a conference situation, particularly like you are now. So maybe there are some developmental guys that wouldn't get an opportunity to start. But it's when you're playing 4 games in a weekend, it's going to be pretty much all hands on deck, I think, particularly for that 4th game, and you have to have guys that can give you multiple innings.
Babbers, want to go to football here and get your take on Ron Brown's role revealed. And we were pretty sure he'd be doing more football-related activities. Senior offensive analyst, as great as he's been for the football program, as long as he's been at Nebraska, what can he do as Nebraska heads into year 4 for Frost?
Well, I think he can give you some stability in your offensive planning. As an offensive analyst, I'm probably not a good one to comment that because I'm a big Ron Brown fan.
Same here.
And so I'm biased in that sense. But I really think that he has the great background, and his coaching experience began with defense, and so he's seen it across the board. I think that's positive, even if you're an offensive analyst. With the experience that he's had on both sides of the ball, I just think that can't do anything but help you.
Babbers, to wrap, what happens tonight, round 2 against Maryland for Husker Hoops?
Well, I don't know. It's a weird situation, isn't it, Smitty? Mm-hmm. I think it's the first time they played the team back-to-back, they were saying, since 1976.
Yes.
Hawaii. Yeah, it's weird. I expect the Huskers to come out and give it everything they got, but you'd like to see what that 2-game stretch where they beat Penn State and then played Illinois into overtime. Maybe we'll see that team out there. It's probably tough to. It's going to be more difficult, I guess, to beat a team on a second night in a row when you see them, and you should be better prepared. But Nebraska's getting pretty worn down too, so physically. So
they are, and they faded last night, and I think. Part of that fatigue, man, it's easier to settle for quick shots or jump shots versus the energy it takes to drive into the teeth of a defense, and it wasn't falling at the rim anyway last night. But, Nebraska, as good as Maryland is defensively, I thought Nebraska was their own worst enemy last night with some of that shot selection. And man, it's proof, though, that Fred's offense, when they move the ball, man, they are so good at getting open looks, and a lot of those open looks have turned into conversions. I mean, they've hit some open shots. They've gotten better. Now, I know in the second half it wasn't falling for them, but they're still kind of a work in progress with being an unselfish team, and I think you've seen some progress in that, but you want to see a full game of commitment to that, and we'll see where they go. Babbers, you have a great rest of your week. You stay safe and healthy, and stay warm, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Smitty. Be safe.
You too. There he is, Mike Babcock, historian, author, Hall of Famer. Read him with Hail Varsity Magazine, HailVarsity.com. Follow him on Twitter at MDBabs. We'll head off to Wilderness Ridge, check in with Mike Schuhart. Shuey's on the way. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jacob Padilla's going to join us in 25 minutes. Thoughts on Husker volleyball, Husker basketball, prep action, and we'll spend some time with Andy Markowski. We welcome in Mike Schuart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey, no Nebraska football in Ireland, which, man, you've been across the pond to golf, I assume?
I have. I've been there, actually. That's really too bad. That's a really fun, awesome place to go.
So we're going to have to switch gears in hopefully Nebraska Northwestern in 2023 or 2024 can get handled.
I hope so. That's a fun trip. I mean, that is a really cool place to go.
It sounds like it, but we're going to end up just roading to Champaign, I guess. The Champagne room, shall we? I mean, you know.
Okay, I guess if we have to.
we're trading Dublin for Champagne. Okay,
well, it doesn't sound like a very good trade to me, but
no, I know. I gotta get your take on. 25 years ago, yesterday was the release of Happy Gilmore. And it's one of my favorites. I know as a golf guy, it had some comedy in it that was pretty good. Caddyshack still kind of on the top pedestal. But who on tour, in your opinion, most closely resembles Shooter McGavin?
Shooter McGavin.
Shooter.
That's on tour right now.
Just
McGavin.
In your history with pro golf, who reminds you of Shooter?
There's a guy that I played with out there. Bob Friend was his name. And
tell me about Bob.
His nickname was the Governor. So he was the governor. He was the man. He knew everything. He was in charge. So we knew when he was done playing golf that he was going to be the governor of some state sooner or later. So that's why he got to be the governor.
Okay. Now I'm going to flip it around. Who does anybody past or present have some Gilmore tendencies?
Oh, Frank Licklider and Timmy Lumpy Heron. Those two are almost perfect examples of him. That's how they play. That's how they talk. That's how they live. I mean, that's happy to a T right there.
Okay.
Frank Licklider especially.
Give me a little background on Frank.
Frank would come driving up to the events in his camoed out Humvee with the music blaring. So
wow,
Frank would be pretty good.
Mike Schuart's with us. Hail Varsity Radio, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey, a thought on the U.S. Open and the Pro-Am at Pebble Beach. You know, what were your takeaways from the weekend?
Pebble Beach is beautiful. If you ever have a chance to go play there, you got to go play. That's a bucket list place. Very strange because, you know, no typical Pro-Am, no people out there cheering. So a little strange, but it's a super exciting tournament like it typically is. I mean, it was incredible shots. Golf course is very, very difficult. That's why it's too bad TV doesn't do it justice. I mean, I saw the one, I think they were talking about the greens, how all 18 greens at Pebble Beach could fit into number one green at St. Andrews.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. So that just tells you how small the greens really are. I mean, that's why TV does them no justice. They're so small with some serious undulation in them. You know, the thing about Pebble that's so amazing to me is that it was built basically in 1902. Mm-hmm. So imagine that golf course built then, and it's withstood the stand of, you know, the time. So it's like they built that unbelievable golf course back then, and it's still basically the same as it was then as it is now. So it's a really fabulous place.
Shuey, are you up in arms about the PGA and their take on rangefinders now?
No. I mean, it was going that direction. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's not going to be that big of a deal because the caddies and the players don't. they don't use them that much in a sense. I mean, they have their players' books is what they call that has a lot of the yardage and everything that's there. You know, the most of the work that caddies do are on the greens. So, you know, the rangefinders really won't be that big of a deal. You know, especially not using being able to use the component of a rangefinder that actually is the most beneficial, which is the slope factor is what it's called.
Sure.
So rangefinders actually, when your slope's on, it can tell you, man, this is playing 5 yards down or 10 yards down or 10 yards up, things like that. See, that's not available. You're not available to use that. Not legal to do that. So it's not that big of a deal. And I just think it's trending that way, you know, with technology and what's out there. I just think it's helps speed play up, actually.
Okay. Should we get a switch gears before we talk wilderness and fitting and lessons? How optimistic are you for Husker hoops tonight?
Oh, none. They have no chance.
Is that fatigue? Is that...
no, that's just bad.
Okay, so do you still check in on them, or are you on a Shuey basketball timeout?
No, I always check in on them because I like watching Huskers no matter what it is, just to, you know, in that optimistic, rooting, hope something happens. But no, you can't be a D1 basketball player and shoot free throws like that. I don't even know how that's possible.
Well,
that's
short.
Worse than that's worse than high school.
Well,
every one of them. That's what's amazing. And you call yourself a D1 basketball player? You got to be kidding me. You should be ashamed of yourself.
You sound a little pissed, Shuey. It's okay, brother. I love it. I think their effort's been incredible, and I know you need to get beyond the try hard part of it. They want to win, but they're no. I don't know that there's much left in the tank because it's been pretty grueling.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, they do play hard, you know. But I don't like to watch them play because they're just. How many times do they throw the ball around? How many times do 5 guys touch it before a shot goes up? Never.
Not soon. I mean, it's better, but not as much as it needs to.
I mean, they play ball. All of them think they play ball like they're an All-American, and they're, you know, none of them are all junior high. You know, so it's like you got a mentality that's out there, and these guys are going to. Shamil, that guy would never see the court. I mean, why does that guy get in the game and think he's going to take the game over all the time? It's like, and all he does is turn it over and foul. So it's like, I don't get it. I mean, it's like, I don't get why you won't make the extra pass to your teammate. I guess because he's going to throw up a brick just like you are, so what's it matter?
Well, it comes down to the trust.
Yeah.
Mike, before we let you go, we need to let you tell us what's going down at Wilderness, and I want to ask you, if anyone out there is looking for a lesson, sell yourself. Could you fix Happy Gilmore's swing?
Oh, yeah. You can fix anybody. That's what we do. I mean, that's identify what's going on, give you ideas, give you techniques, give you drills that if you work on them, they will make you better, no question. So that's what we do.
Your idea that Chubb stole was the clown's mouth, right? I mean, it is what it is.
That's right.
Shuey's with us here on Hail Varsity. Mike Schuart, Wilderness Ridge, get a lesson and get signed up and be a member today. Shuey, we'll talk next week. Thank you so much, bud.
You bet. Always enjoy.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Plenty of thoughts on Husker volleyball, prep hoops, and Big Red basketball. Jacob Padilla's 10 minutes away. Eddie Markowski, the pride of Ord, going to be in Husker standout. Get his take on tonight. Reminder about moving in 2021. West Blue Realty is there for you. They specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and the surrounding communities. They'll make your next move a smooth one for a limited time. You mentioned Hail Varsity, and West Blue Realty can provide up to $1,000 on the closing of your next home purchase. Give Tom Luby a phone call today at 402-540-3768 or contact Kelly Hofschneider. Kelly's awesome as well. 402-202-2312. It pays to work with West Blue. WestBlueRealty.com, 1120 K Street, Suite 200. I'm going to be getting massive amounts of golf in. a week from today through Sunday. So that my countdown is on. I am handing the Ferrari or SUV or lovable beater, however you want to describe the show, off to our dear friend here, Elijah Herbel. And, of course, Damon Barr. Are you pretty fired up?
Oh, I'm always excited when I get a chance to host the show.
You're just going to be like, get it done. You're going to fire it up.
I got to find some cool guests for next week.
Go for it.
Already got to start looking into it. Have you picked your golf courses out next week? Do you know which ones you're playing?
I have. My brother and I are going to go play with my dad's old group, which is really cool. They invited us to play Thursday morning. So we'll do that. We'll go play with my mother. And her home course is Pebble Creek. She's playing right now. And I know we talked about it last week with Barnett. Coach Barney's like proud of my mother because she's winning and gambling and just taking all sorts of money on the course. She's killing it.
I mean, if I'm a gambling man, I think the bet I'd go is the over/under on vodka lemonades next weekend.
See, yes.
the line's got to be, if it's the whole weekend, what are we talking here? At least 10.5? Is that the line?
A day?
Over the weekend.
Okay, I was going to say, dude.
10.5 in a day.
We can try.
I want you to come back.
We can totally try that. I don't know. I think the over/under on as we wait in the airport, what beer's going to cost me.
That's a good one too.
I think the accurate number you threw out's 10.5
for a bottle. Yeah.
Give me a warm domestic, please. So no, excited to sneak away for a little bit. Excited that Elijah and Damon are going to do their thing, and then I'm excited to go see my mom and spend some time with my brother. So the countdown's on. And golf down there is phenomenal. Pebble Creek, I think it's a 27-hole resort where my mom's at. And no, that's it's kind of a thing we've been looking forward to for quite a while. Basketball, and Nebraska has gotten better. Can they put it together for a second time in 3 games? What is kind of been the secret for Nebraska volleyball, aside from excellence in coaching, recruiting, developing, and executing? Minnesota comes to town, and it is going to be on big time for Nebraska volleyball. Jacob will enlighten us there. And what did last weekend show us about Nebraska basketball from a prep standpoint with Bell West and Millard North? And we're getting close to some district action, so plenty to cover with Jacob Padilla next to Hail Varsity. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Let's welcome in Jacob Padilla from HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla _ is where you can follow him on Twitter. Jacob, pretty busy weekend for you, man, and thanks for joining us today with a lot to talk about. Let's dive into some Husker basketball thoughts, and I thought your question and insight with just kind of not only the recap for Nebraska's loss to Maryland last night was outstanding on HailVarsity.com, but also your question to Coach Hoiberg at the end of his Zoom session last night with stagnation. And tell me, as a guy who looks at basketball, what you like about where Nebraska basketball's gone really since the Minnesota game to Illinois, that time frame to now, and what are some areas that you think Nebraska basketball still has a chance to grow in and maybe finish out a little stronger?
The first thing I think you look at is just the defensive effort and the way they've been scrapping since the start, since they came back, that is. And they showed some defensive promise earlier in the season, and then it kind of got away from them as they got into conference play, and they're able to kind of lock back in on that end. And they've been pretty tough to score on for long stretches since they've come back. And that defensive effort, it might be to the point now where the fatigue is really catching up on them, because that down the stretch against Maryland yesterday, they just couldn't get any stops, but also couldn't score, so let's say you get a 20-5 run. But the defensive effort is the first thing, and then I think the change the last couple of games in the offense and guys, I thought Teddy Allen had one of his better decision-making games of the season against Penn State, with the way he was mixing up between scoring and driving to make a play for others. He was jump stopping in the lane. He was driving and kicking out. He wasn't forcing it too much, and he ended up taking a couple tough ones when they went into that scoring drought. But, I mean, that's going to be the case when Nebraska struggles on offense. Most of the time, Teddy's going to be the one taking a shot because he's the only guy that can really create something out of nothing. So that's, I think, going to end up hurting his perception, and I think that has been the case this year, where kind of he's the bailout guy, and so all you see is, Teddy taking another bad shot. But I think it was a failure on the offense as a whole that led to that. Occasionally he'll take a heat check, like the top of the key three last night was a tough look. But Teddy was the only guy that was scoring yesterday. And again, he was the only guy that made a shot in the last 8 minutes of the game. He had 2 buckets. That's all Nebraska scored from the field in the last 8 minutes of that game. So that's kind of where the stagnation kicked in. And that's what I was talking about. Asking Coach Hoiberg yesterday is the thing is, like, the ball movement is kind of what you harp on, but it's not necessarily just on the guy with the ball to make that happen. You got to have off-ball movement. Guys got to set screens off the ball. They got to cut hard. If guys are standing around, passing the ball around the perimeter doesn't do anything. So the ball movement has to have purpose. And kind of when things really started to slow down and become much more of a grind in the second half, guys just kind of stopped with that movement, and guys were standing around and staring and waiting for somebody else to make a play. And that's kind of where this team has gotten in trouble all season long, and that's what happens when they go into these scoring droughts. So when they've got guys working off the ball as much as the guy working on the ball, that's when they can be tough, and that's what we saw against Illinois to a certain degree for stretches, and against Penn State, and for a little bit against Maryland, even though the problem with that game, even more so than that, was they just couldn't make layups. They couldn't finish. They were generating good looks early in the game, but those didn't go down, and then they just kind of stopped later in the game. So there's a lot to like from this last couple of stretch, but also they can't allow to kind of fall back into those old habits, because it cost them in a big way last night.
Jacob Padilla is with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine at @JacobPadilla_ on Twitter's where you find him. Back to your guys kind of standing around. Was that due to fatigue, or is it back to the trust where, okay, I'm not going to get the ball, or let's let someone take over, i.e. Teddy, because he's going to get us the best look, or at least be able to create? Why do you think they were unwilling to move or cut like they were? Is it just flat out the fatigue factor?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I asked. That's kind of how I framed my question last night. Was sorry, excuse me. It seems like it was probably a combination of all of the above. I think when what you're running is working and you're still not getting rewarded for it, i.e. you're getting to the rim and guys are just blowing shots, then it's really easy to get discouraged, and kind of that trust erodes a little bit. Like, you can't really count on your guys to finish off their part when you're kind of seeing that over and over again. So I'm sure that had part of it. And then obviously however many games and however many days now, I've kind of lost track at this point, that's got to be part of it. And especially kind of where these stretches, these second half of games, this last quarter of games where they've really struggled, I think that's where you probably do see kind of fatigue set in most. And especially when you're missing one of your key guys in Derek Walker for the whole second half. So guys are being extended even more so than they were in the first half. And then some of that is just, that's kind of what we've seen from this team is they get down a little bit. And I said, like you said, they kind of keep staying around and look for somebody else to make a play, and that can't be the case. That's something they're going to have to continue to battle. And Hoiberg said they were going to put together an edit from that last 8 minutes to show these guys, hey, this is exactly what we can't do, and this is what's going to continue to cost us games if we let this settle in. So I'm guessing it was a kind of combination of all of the above here, and they're going to have to find a way to kind of gut it out here because I'm sure the legs aren't going to feel any better today than they did yesterday.
Hail Varsity Radio, talking a little Husker basketball with Hail Varsity's Jacob Padilla. And Jacob, one of the guys you mentioned in there didn't play in the second half last night, and that was Derek Walker. But Derek Walker is one of those guys that we've heard a lot about early in the season whenever he had to sit out because of NCAA suspension. We heard about just the impact that the Husker coaching staff thought he could have on the court. We've seen that the past couple games. Just what are your thoughts on Derek Walker and how he fits into this Fred Hoiberg system?
Yeah, I think he's been a huge addition, even if he hasn't put up big numbers. First, defensively, the way he was battling against Kofi Coburn against Illinois to win that game, and Kofi still ended up with a big game, but he had to earn all that. He only got off 8 shots from the field. They put him in the foul line when they needed to, and he did a great job of battling and staying in front, and not giving him easy post touches for most of the minutes he was out there. And so he's a guy that kind of has that experience, that understands angles and all the little things it takes to defend well, particularly in the post. And offensively, you're seeing them run a lot of offense through him. And they don't have a great on-ball creator at point guard where a guy that's going to kind of run the show and run the whole offense. So what they're doing is they're putting the ball in Walker's hands at the high post and then running cutters all over the court. And he's made some phenomenal passes over the top to guys to the rim for layups. And we've seen that early in games, especially when they come out, and that's one of the first sets they run. And so cuts, handoffs, all that kind of stuff. They're looking to get him the ball and run the offense through him. And that's just not something that you really get out of Ivan Udraogo. And Eduardo Andre, I think, kind of shows some potential in that area, but he's a true freshman. And you can see even that game yesterday, there was some really good stuff early on and then some stuff where he really struggled, and you can see the inexperience. So Walker gives you kind of just that steady presence on both ends of the floor. And then he's savvy, too. He understands where to set screens. I mean, a lot of their threes, I know Teddy, in that run early on against Wisconsin, Derek was the guy setting the screens to get Teddy open, and it was just kind of within the flow of the offense, like recognize, all right, we got a drive going here. I'm going to go set this flare screen and get Teddy a wide open 3. And that's just kind of a feel thing. And so all those little things is what he brings to this team. And it's been really important having him out there. And hopefully he can go today. It looks like, based on the pictures they tweet out, that he is going through warm-ups right now. But Fred Hoiberg did say that he just wasn't feeling well yesterday and that they'd reevaluate him today.
Jacob, want to go to volleyball. Minnesota comes to town 8:30 Friday night, and then an 11 o'clock little brunch special Sunday. You do an amazing job covering Nebraska volleyball. You know, what do you expect this weekend? And I know also Wisconsin, number 1 in the country, looms. But, you know, where do you think Nebraska's game can rise and will need to rise up against tougher competition here in the Big Ten?
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to step their level of play up consistently this weekend from what we've seen previously. But also that might just be a case of, well, early in the season we're playing lesser teams. We kind of feel like we don't have to go 100% the entire match here. And maybe they did take Rutgers and Maryland a little bit easier than they would certainly take a team like Minnesota. So I think that's kind of what you're hoping to see is like, all right, now they're locked in. They can clean up some of the passing issues and kind of the connection issues at times, communication issues that we saw that led to them dropping a couple of sets in the first 3 weekends. But Minnesota has been significantly more tested to this point. They played 5-game matches against against Penn State and against Purdue. And Nebraska hasn't gone past 4 sets yet. They haven't really been pushed to the same degree. So Minnesota does kind of have that edge coming in, knowing that, all right, we've been here, we've done that in these 5-game sets, but also Nebraska has done that in the past, and they've got a lot of players back from with a lot of experience. So we'll see if kind of that home court advantage, even without a real crowd, can kind of give Nebraska that little edge there to overcome the experience that Minnesota's already gained in this young season.
In your opinion, how big has Kayla Caffey been for Nebraska?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. John Cook has continued to experiment with that middle blocker rotation where Caffey has drawn most of the starts, but he's also gone to Callie Schwarzenbach at times, who is one of the best blockers, probably the best blocker on the team. She just hasn't really developed offensively. So it's kind of like you're picking, all right, do we need more offensive punch this game, or do we feel like we need kind of a more defensive presence? And he's tried to make sure to kind of keep Kayla fresh, too, and giving Callie some of these games chances to kind of start and play the whole set. So she is kind of an unorthodox middle blocker, listed only at 6 feet. But she is quick off the ground and has a really sharp arm. You can see kind of the way the ball comes off her hand when she gets a good contact on it. That can see the kind of the arm that Cook has talked about with her and how special of an attacker she can be at times. So they're still kind of developing that connection between Nicklin Hames and Caffey, and Cook is still kind of working out, all right, what's best for how do I want to handle this rotation. But that's certainly a luxury to be able to have 2 viable options there that you can go with depending on what the matchup is and what the situation calls for.
Jacob, for Nebraska to have a chance against Minnesota this weekend, who, in your opinion, needs to be the MVP? Who needs to step up?
I don't know about MVP because with the way this team can play, they can win a lot of different ways. You can see Lauren Stivrins was absolutely dominant in the first game against Maryland, the first home weekend. And then the next day, it was much more balanced where they had a handful of different players in double-digit kills, and Lauren wasn't quite as effective. So in terms from an attacking perspective, I don't know if there's any one player that needs to be the MVP, but you're going to need their passers to step up, and I think that's going to be the key. They did not pass particularly well against Rutgers, and that's kind of where they got themselves into a hole. And Cook turned to his deep bench, threw in a redshirt freshman walk-on in Emma Gable, who had not yet played a single point at Nebraska because of an ACL tear she suffered in the spring of 2019. So he had to. It's like, well, nothing else was working, so I'm going to give her a chance. And she went in and did a good job and kind of helped stabilize things. But you can't be in a situation where you're going to turn to a redshirt freshman walk-on to solve your problems. So those players in the back row, Kenzie Knuckles and Kayleigh Akana and Lexi Sun when she's back there, they're going to have to be really sharp in the back row and to pass at a high rate so that Nicklin Hames can get it to her hitters in good situations.
Jacob, about 30 seconds. Prep game of the week or weekend you're circling?
The Millard North at Prep coming up tomorrow. That got pushed back. Because worried about the power. That's probably, I think, in terms of this week, that's probably one of the biggest ones. It's that one, and then Prep Central on Saturday, too. So it's a huge week for Prep, who I think you feel pretty good about at that number 3 spot now. Mm-hmm. If they got to beat Central to kind of hold on to that role, especially after the loss Central had against North Star this past week. But if they can go and kind of pull off that upset against Millard North, that'll be huge just for the standings heading into the postseason, because right now Pius is ahead of Prep in the wild card points.
Jacob Padilla, HailVarsity.com and magazine. His podcast with Damon Benning also covers all Prep action. Jacob, have a great weekend and rest of your week. Thanks for the time, bud.
Yep, anytime.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome.
More Husker Hoops talk. The pride of Ord and Husker standout Andy Markowski with us at Markowski_Andy. That's where you follow him on Twitter. Assistant with an incredible Pius basketball team. Andy, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing well, Schmidt. I wish I was in sunny Florida or somewhere warm, but fortunately, I'm stuck here with the rest of us battling this miserably cold weather.
You want to roll down to Arizona next Wednesday? I'm flying out down to play some golf.
Yeah, I would. I'm about 2 months away from golf yet. I'm getting old. I had my shoulder replaced in October, so my target golf is going to be May, but it doesn't mean I can't caddy and have a couple cocktails and enjoy the conversation.
Well, the over-under Elijah set was 10.5 vodka lemonades for me. And he covered himself and said, "Well, I meant for the weekend." I'm like, okay, whatever, dude.
Yeah, that's the front nine. Then we're going to move to something better on the back. Is that the plan?
I have found a new golf partner in Andy Markowski. So, if you could pick any team in the old Big 8 or Big 12 to play back-to-back, who would it be?
Oh, wow. What a question. I always love Missouri, with Norm and the Antlers. That was always kind of a feisty rivalry. I would say Kansas, but I've got, outside of my senior year sweeping them, there's a lot of 30, 20-point losses, so I don't know if I want to sign back up for that. But certainly Missouri was always a fun environment and, with good teams and teams that we were competitive against. So I would have to say Missouri.
So was that for show and heat of the moment, or did Norm and Danny truly hate each other?
Well, I don't know the true hatred, but they were both very competitive, and I think Norm kind of looked down his nose at Danny in Nebraska, and there was a run there where we were beating them, right, and they didn't love that one bit. So I think it was probably a competitive rivalry, but Norm was kind of old school, and Danny was kind of the New York guy, on the block. So I imagine their personalities didn't quite always mesh in the old Big 8 coaches meetings.
Probably not. And going down to Mexico, Missouri, and then beating Missouri with Missouri kids probably ticked Norm off a little bit too.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Andy Markowski's with us. Andy, what do you make of Nebraska's offensive output? It's been better, but with Husker Hoops, what have you liked? What have you liked from what you've seen with Fred's system here? They're playing hard. We've nailed that, but they've also been better. But there's still some humps to get over as well with just shot selection, decision making.
I think they're immensely better. Now that's not translating into wins, or sometimes it's still an ugly product on the court. But if you can line up and play with Illinois and have them be, you've got some guys that can play, because you don't fool your way into playing with a team like Illinois that's talented. So I think their talent level is up. I think the cohesiveness, the role definition, they don't have an elite point guard. They have some marginal guys that can run the point, but yet I think they're missing a true point guard. So Fred has changed his system a little bit. Walker has given them the ability to run some Princeton stuff, because he's a really, really good passer and a screener and a good decision maker with the ball. So losing him in the second half last night, I think hurt that. And then the other thing that really hurt them is this is relatively a new part of Fred's offense. Last year it was more open with Cam Mack, ball screen, drive it downhill. We don't have the ability to beat people one-on-one. So going to this Princeton stuff has given us a better chance. And Maryland was the first team to really switch all of that and keep the ball in front, which really stymied us. That second half, our offensive output and efficiency was really poor. But that goes back to this lack of practice time, right? You put a new system in, give Maryland credit. They were able to scout it and maybe make some adjustments that we weren't ready to counter back. So I'm kind of excited tonight to see, what adjustments Fred can make back the other way. It's almost like an NBA series, right? You kind of give up a game, and which coaching staffs can go back to the drawing board and make some corrections. So I'm anxious to see what Fred will do with the personnel he has. Hopefully, they have a full roster of guys back, and we'll see what Game 2 brings tonight.
Eddie Markowski's with us, Husker standout, the pride of Ord, Hail Varsity Radio, avid golfer, I have just learned. So what is that? Put your coaching cap on for a second. What is that? What are the options to counter? I mean, not too in the weeds with the X's and O's, but what can you do offensively if you're Nebraska, aside from just make layups, clearly?
Yeah, well, Nebraska went small last night, and played Stevenson, because of that switch, and Fred was trying to drive a little bit from there. But getting Walker back, I think will help. But then if they're going to switch, you got to be able to put the ball on the block a little bit more. So I could see Fred not playing, as small. Webster, I still think there's a role for him to be out there more with his decision-making and ability to make a shot off the dribble. Teddy was really the only player last night that, felt like he had an advantage driving the basketball. So I think he'll go away from the Princeton stuff if Walker's not playing. If he is, look for them to stay a little bit more big and maybe post and pick and roll a little bit more out of that, where they get more at the rim than what they did last night, where they were just forced to shoot late shot jump shots just because Maryland did such a terrific job of keeping the ball out of the paint.
Andy Markowski with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Andy, when you look at the game tonight, Husker is playing on a back-to-back. But on the flip side of things, Maryland's also playing on a back-to-back. So what are you expecting tonight? How difficult is it to play on the back-and-back or on a back-to-back like that? And are you expecting this to be an ugly game?
Yeah, I don't know. The fatigue, I think all that is a little overrated for college age kids, right? I mean, they're playing a ton of games in a row, but they're not doing this for 4 months straight. I think over the course of 30 or 45 days, we can, they should be in good enough shape to manage that. I know Fred is probably going a little deeper in his rotation, trying to protect the amount of minutes his group is playing. But I think Maryland, for what I've seen of Maryland, really shot the ball well last night, probably a little better than maybe what they're capable of. I know one of their own kids, averaging 6, had 15 or 16. So you've got to make sure you do a better job of not letting, players that shouldn't be scoring double digits get there. But, yeah, I don't think it'll be ugly. I think it'll be an improved game. Both coaches kind of know what they need to do to adjust. 50 points is not a great output for Nebraska, but we held Maryland down a little bit under their average. So I think as well as Maryland shot it, I think this is going to be a much more competitive game, late than what it was last night.
Andy, what's the special sauce for finishing at the rim? I mean, you're a big guy. You've had to finish in traffic. You coach it to finish down low. And be able to either take contact and focus. Nebraska was able to get there and just not close the deal. I think 7-19 on layups, and it's rough. Obviously, just make it, but take us in from a Big's perspective with the reality of why you'd miss so many.
Yeah, well, two things. I think, another thing, going back to practice, not to make an excuse. You do a lot of bag work at college. There's some external devices you use to challenge shots for guys to get used to finishing, through vision being impaired or taking a bump to your lower body. But the reality of some of the layups they missed last night, Chris, is you just got. I mean, and I miss layups. I'm not trying to throw stones here, but at some point, you got to make those. I mean, Thor had a left-handed, at the rim. Stevenson had a reverse layup at the rim with no contact. I mean, you have got to make those plays in the Big Ten, and I think Fred alluded to it in his press conference. I mean, their margin of of winning and losing is so small. When you shoot so poorly from the free throw line that this group has had, you better make layups, and they didn't do either last night. So there are some things coaches need to drill and get people comfortable playing in traffic. But in the end, if you're a college player in the Big Ten and you want to win, you better have the guys that are going to go either make that or dunk that. And I do think we have more of those guys on our roster, but we need to continue to upgrade our talent as the league. This might be the best league in the history of college basketball, right? From a metric standpoint, so that just goes to tell you that, if you don't have talent, I use the saying, and I've probably said on this show, we played 14 Big 8 games. Coach Nee scheduled 6, bad non-conference wins. And then we moved to the Big 12 where we had 16 games. They move into the Big 10 where they have 18. Now the Big 10 is 20. So you're trying to compare it to the records we had in the 90s of playing 14 league games versus now 20 in what is probably the best league in the country the last 4 or 5 years. It's not a comparable apples to apples comparison. I do think our program is getting better, but yet some of that has to translate on the court, and the players have to believe they can win. And hopefully they can get a couple wins here late, and maybe sneak one in the Big Ten tournament and carry some of that momentum into the spring and the summer.
Should be good. Andy, about 20 seconds here. What's the schedule for your hoops these next couple of days? What's the weekend look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we have a rare. I'm actually have the high school girls in the car. We're heading to Pius. We have the Lincoln Southeast Knights tonight. Obviously, yesterday's weather kind of threw a wrench into the Tuesday schedule. So, the Pius high school teams are winding down this week with a couple regular season games, and then in the districts the following week, and then kind of the 5-day state tournament marathon, hopefully the first week of March. So the finish line is near, but hopefully we have a lot of games to yet to play. The team has a lot of good goals, and I'm excited to kind of watch them finish the year here.
Well, it's a ton of fun watching the Pius girls play ball, and should be great in March. Eddie, be good. Have a great weekend. Thanks for your time, man. Always appreciate you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care. Eddie Markowski with us, the pride of Ord, standout Husker, and part of that good squad at Pius. You know what? Southwest and Pius, really talented, high-level ball clubs.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. Dr. Brandon, did you enjoy the Tampa boat parade and the old wobbly Tom Brady?
I can't say I saw the parade itself. I've seen some pictures post-parade, which is obviously pretty awesome for that city to go through that. And again, just a remarkable kind of career for Brady and his company. It's pretty awesome.
Well, you've got reports out. You're going to have either air quote little cleanup on Tom Brady's knee, or when this gets out, conflicting reports between Tampa and Boston. The legend of Brady will grow even larger. Remember back to 2010 when he got rocked and had that ACL injury. And we fast forward, 11 years later, and here's Tom Brady, all sorts of wobbly apparently because of avocado tequila or just a really sore knee, right, getting off the boat. Where are you at here, Dr. Brandon, with what may be going on with Brady's scheduled procedure here on that left knee?
Yeah, absolutely. You try to read through the lines a little bit. Obviously, there's kind of speculation on a couple of different sides here, a little minor cleanup versus this could be something pretty significant. There's also some reports out there that, quote, he's been planning on this procedure for a while. Obviously, we're sitting over here trying to speculate, too, as to what this could be. But, just from my experience, what he's gone through with the ACL in the past, obviously the sport that he plays, the big thing here would be they're talking about just a cleanup. That could be something as simple as, either like a meniscus tear. We've talked about these before on the show. Anatomically, the meniscus is a cartilage pad, essentially, that sits in between the two bones inside the knee, a C-shaped type structure. Pretty easy to, tear something like that at that kind of level, especially if he's had a previous ACL injury here and perhaps even a meniscus injury here before with that ACL. So it could be tweak the knee a little bit, had a little small tear in that meniscus. They're going to go in and do a scope and clean that up. That's probably what this is. The other thing it could be is, some scar tissue can show up inside the knee with all the wear and tear he's had, the ACL surgery. So again, something like go in with a knee scope and just kind of clean up the scar tissue. If it's one of those two, then again, that's a pretty quick recovery. Shouldn't be a huge, long-term deficit for him, obviously depending on the size of that kind of meniscus injury. The third thing this could be is, some debris floating in the knee, such as the cartilage. So the cartilage itself is actually the smooth layer that covers the ends of the bones inside the knee and all of your joints for that matter, and essentially functions as kind of the articulating or smooth surface where the joints basically glide against one another. Obviously at that level, the injuries he's had, the training he's done, he probably has some damage to that cartilage layer, and perhaps there's maybe some loose pieces that are either maybe still attached and kind of flipping over themselves, causing mechanical issues, or even some loose floating cartilage debris in the knee that also can cause swelling, catching, those kinds of things. And again, that could be something as simple as just a knee scope cleanup too. Where this becomes complicated is obviously this kind of last category, this cartilage injury category. If he has, cartilage damage that's extensive to the point of extending all the way down to the bony surface, obviously, if you're going to keep playing and want to have, a reasonably normal life after playing, you want to have a good cartilage layer that's left there. And so this is where some differences in terms of how they treat this can come into play in terms of recovery as well. So if they get in there and start cleaning up the cartilage, it could be that maybe there's some defects that go down to the bone, and then you have to start to make some decisions intraoperatively about what do you do with that. How do you kind of regrow cartilage? Could you maybe put some cartilage back in that area? At his age, things that they would, think about for him, obviously depends on the size of that lesion of cartilage injury and the location, but you could do a thing where you could take some cartilage out from an area you don't need. You could transplant that cartilage to that area. That's one option. It's called an Oates procedure. The other more common option out there that works really well is to take some cartilage from an area you don't need, send it off to a lab. They can grow those cells, and you can actually re-implant or glue those cells into that area with a matrix. And that can basically be a cartilage transplant, if you will. But obviously, if you start talking about that level of, cartilage regeneration, cartilage transplant, you're looking at a really long recovery in some of the order of, 6 to 12 months for somebody at the NFL level.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. We're talking Tom Brady and his pending knee procedure. So it's kind of like replacing the awful chunk swing on the golf course, right? You just regrow that cartilage. It sounds so easy, but let's get into Brady's age and his diet, his pliability, the lack of inflammation in his body. I mean, those are all things he is so ultra serious about to allow him to keep playing. I want to go back to the remnants of 2010 and the ACL, and how much has the procedure, the care, changed in this decade since on your guys' end when it comes to a guy who had an ACL repair in 2010 compared to now, and how much more advanced, or for lack of a better term, cleaner is it on the medical side?
Mm-hmm. I would say just from a graft perspective, we've talked before about when you remake an ACL, you have to kind of reconstruct the ACL. You can't sew it back together. And so, using other tissue to do that, whether it's, hamstring tendon we've talked about, or using a patella tendon, which is a tendon that comes down from the kneecap, or even some of the other things that are out there, a quad tendon graft that's kind of out there, and people are trying to popularize that as well. So graft choice-wise, I wouldn't say there's been any huge differences, at least from a graft perspective. How we fix the graft inside of the knee, and if you add things to it to give it more stability, that definitely has improved over the last 10 years for sure. I wouldn't necessarily say the arthroscopic technique itself has changed that much in terms of morbidity to the patient with regard to incisions that you make on the patient. That's probably about the same last 10 years. There's still some newer things out there called biologics, which is where you would add some type of autologous material, whether it be a thing called PRP, platelet-rich plasma, which is something you draw someone's blood out, take the top layer, and spin it down after a centrifuge, and then essentially take the top layer, and there's some healing potential in that. So finding a way to add that to your ACL graft, that is something newer that they're working with. There's some other biologics that are out there that people are trying to add to their grafts to help basically incorporate them into the knee after you fix it. So those things are out there. Probably the biggest thing that I see difference in the last 10 years is basically the big thing with ACL surgery is where you attach that graft on the femur or the thigh bone is really important, that kind of positioning of that. And there's a newer device out there for kind of essentially drilling that tunnel or that placement on the femur. A retro-reaming guide would be the kind of a classic name for it. But that's something that's really changed. And as that has come out, we're just seeing greater, much improved positioning of ACL grafts. And so that would be something that would be a big improvement over the last 10 years, just from a technology perspective.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday, and we're talking Tom Brady, his pending procedure on that knee. As differing reports here, just a cleanup, says his head coach, which I tend to believe, versus the wow, this will grow the legend of Tom Brady even more. But he's coming back, should be good to go, and hopefully it's nothing too serious for Tampa fans and for Brady fans. Dr. Brandon, stay bundled up, dude, and we'll get this done again real soon. Thanks for the time today.
Absolutely, bud. You guys take care.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Wednesday, Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Buckle up. Save a life, save your life. Over 1,500 crashes each year in Nebraska, and they involve an impaired driver. Driving drunk, buzzed, or high is never acceptable. Law enforcement officers are working every day to stop it before more people are killed or injured. If you're going to drive, don't drink. If you do drink, get a designated driver or get that ride share ordered. Get a ride. A DUI costs more than you think. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. We're loaded up tomorrow. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel, the pride of Chicago. Danny Burke will be in with some Burke's Best Bets. Gary Barnett with us, and then later on Friday, Derek Peterson's back at it, and we'll spend time with Bill Dolman. And then our dear friend Doug Duda, ESPN 1460, 1550, Kearney Hastings, Grand Island. Doug's a Hall of Famer, and Doug is going to be giving us a check-in with State Wrestling, as he is on site there for some of the matchups. Great stuff today. Andy Markowski's fantastic. Jacob Padilla, big time. Mike Babcock and Mike Schuart told us about the governor when we talked about real-life PGA dudes that are more like Shooter and Happy. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com, and give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio or at Herbal Essence. 10.5, that's the line. Nebraska tipping off in 5 minutes. Does Maryland sweep? Does Nebraska split? Does Nebraska cover tonight? They didn't last night. Decisions, Elijah. You know, I think Walker's a difference. I'm going to say Nebraska loses, but Nebraska covers. All right. Mm-hmm. I thought Nebraska would lose last night. I think they would. I thought they would run out of gas. They did. Some good insight by Jacob and the pride of Ord, Andy Markowski, with maybe how Nebraska attacks. And there's some pretty good points by Jacob as well on, that whole. I'm guilty. Like, there's some takes I've had on Teddy, just kind of being a hero ball guy. And no one else was ready to really try and make a play, or at least was getting a shot to go in. So maybe out of necessity. Teddy's done a good job of distributing That'd be nice to see if you're a Nebraska fan. More of that happening tonight. Walker's been warming up. It's going to be a game time decision.
Yeah, according to Kevin Kugler, he's been notified from his little starting lineups that Derek Walker will be starting tonight.
Good.
And for that reason, I got the Huskers winning tonight.
So you got to win, an outright win. Or is this an early stake in a beer bet? Or do you want to save your ammo for the Purdue weekend?
The problem is we haven't talked about this in the show. It's your birthday today. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And I don't want to test your luck on your birthday. I really don't.
I've had you know what? I have three things. I got to FaceTime cousin Dino today. I got a call from Uncle Morris. Talked to my mother. And I have a voicemail 1 year ago today. My dad left me. That always says, "Hey, I'm out golfing. Have a good show." So I got to listen to that today. So I've had a great birthday.
I'm glad to hear it.
I appreciate you.
Enjoy the rest of it.
All right, back at you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity. Have a good one.